Hi, I'm Annie of ByAnnie.com and Patterns by Annie. Thanks so much for joining us for week number 21 of Season 2 of Live with Annie. It's always fun to see all our regular viewers here and to welcome new viewers too. We know there are lots and lots of things you could be doing with your time, so we always really appreciate it when you make the time to be with us. Please make sure that you leave a comment to let us know you're here, where you're joining us from. Follow us wherever you are watching, and if you know somebody who you think would enjoy this, be sure and tag them so that they can join us too. And if you have any questions as we go through today's episode, be sure to enter them in the comments. We are going to leave time at the end to answer whatever questions come in, so I add those to the comments. So last week we had a really great visit with our Longarm Quilter, Linda Brown, and she shared lots of great tips for choosing quilting designs and threads for quilting your projects. So if you missed that, or if you want to watch it again, remember that you can find all the previous 62 episodes of Live with Annie on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, or at ByAnnie.com live. Actually, I think I added wrong. I think it's 72 or 73 even. So we've been doing this for a while. Anyway, Jake's going to put up all the links to make them easy for you to find. So this week and next, we are going to continue our discussion of how to quilt fabrics for your ByAnnie projects, and we're going to share tips for quilting using a domestic machine or a long arm, or doing what we usually do, quilting by check, by sending the fabric to a Longarm Quilter. So our focus today is going to be working with a Longarm Quilter. And we're going to talk about the things that you need to consider when you send your fabrics to be quilted on a Longarm, how to prepare the fabrics for them, how to work with the Longarm Quilter to choose a design, and ways to get the most bang for your quilting buck. To do that, I have invited my sweet friend Kaitlyn of Knot and Thread Design to share her expert tips. A quilter since the age of 11, Kaitlyn was the first full-time ByAnnie employee and was my right-hand lady for quite some time. She helped ship orders, sew models, package soft and stable, assemble zippers and patterns, and all kinds of things. Having worked at both a local Longarm center and at one of our favorite local quilt shops, Kait has lots of knowledge about fabrics, quilting, and more. I credit Kait for teaching me how to choose eye-catching fabrics and to know the names of designers and fabric lines. Kait now operates her own Longarm quilting business, and she also creates fun patterns for quilts, bags, and more. She is also mother to a precious toddler and expecting a new little one soon. I have so enjoyed seeing both her family and her business grow, and I am really proud to have Kaitlyn join us today. So please help me welcome Kaitlyn Pallas Howell of Knot and Thread Design.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here with you today, Annie.
Can you?
Mm-hmm.
You can hear?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Huh, I can't hear anything. Hang on just a minute, I can't hear you.
Okay.
Well, unless I accidentally turned it off when I put it in my pocket. It says it's on. We practiced this morning and it all worked fine. Kaitlyn, feel free to talk a little while I figure out what's going on here. Just know I won't be able to hear you.
Don't worry, I can hear you.
All right.
Glo says she can hear you.
Hi, Glo. I am just so excited to be here with Annie today. Like Annie said, I worked for her for just over 3 years. I loved my time there. Sometimes I miss packaging those zippers. I miss doing that inventory and trade shows with Annie. We just had such good times together, and she's been the best business mentor and cheerleader that I could have ever asked for. So I'm so grateful to Annie for all of the opportunities that she's provided me and for the opportunity to be here with you all today.
Should be working.
Jake says it should be working.
Yes, she's still not hearing me.
He's going to give me his headphones.
All righty. we will be back in business.
Well, you
It's
must.
got,
Oh, they got it
yeah.
pulled down.
Sorry, I'm looking at the camera, but looking at the.
That's what I was thinking. All right, now say
I don't
something.
know where to look.
All right, now
hear
I
me
can
now?
hear you. All
Okay.
right. So poor Jake's not going to be able to hear now, but he'll figure it out. All right. So anyway, thank you for being here. It's really a treat to have you join us today. And I'm really glad that we could arrange to have you visit before your new little one comes. So thank you so much for making the time to be with us.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could be here before this guy shows up too. We've got 6 to 8 more weeks, so
That'll be here before you know it. So enjoy your little bit of time left with Violet before all of a sudden you've got 2. But she will be such an amazing help, and she will be so excited to be a big sister. And having had cousins and stuff around, that's not going to be too big of a change for her.
I sure hope so. They're close. They're going to be about 18 months apart, so I'm like a little nervous. She's still such a mama's girl. Not sure how to juggle 2, but we'll figure it out.
You will figure it out. She will grow up really quickly once that happens. So let's get started. I know that you quilt a ton of quilts, and I always love seeing the pictures that you post regularly on Instagram, especially when you add music to them, because that makes them really fun. And you have some really talented clients, and it's really a treat to see the fabrics they pick, the patterns that they choose, and then how you really bring their quilts to life. I bet sometimes it's really hard for you to send some of those quilts home when you're done.
It definitely is. I feel like I have the best job in the world because I love quilting so much. And so to be able to be inspired by what people send in is just really such a treat. I have totally ordered fabric and copied a couple of quilts exactly because I liked them so much. So yes, definitely hard to send them home, but it's such a privilege to quilt so many people's beautiful quilts. And yeah, I just feel like I have the best job in the world.
That's awesome. Well, in addition to working your magic on quilt tops, you also, I know, quilt fabrics with Soft and Stable for your customers so that they can use them to make purses and bags. And that's what we really want to focus on today, because I know you have some really great tips to share. So I'm just going to turn it over to you. Take it away.
Great. All right. I'm so excited. Working with Annie turned my love of quilting to love of bag making, because it's just an extension of our sewing machine, what we can make with them. And so I am an avid bag maker as well as an avid quilter, but I'm so excited to have you today. I just have a few things I wanted to share, so I'm gonna get out of the way so you can kind of see my setup here, and hopefully you can hear me still okay. I just wanted to talk about a few things today. And one of the first things was working with a longarm quilter. So there's so many talented longarm quilters out there today, and everyone kind of has a different process of how they intake quilts, what they require for quilting. And so I wanted to just go over maybe my process and then hopefully help you so that you can work with me or with another longarm quilter in the future if you are interested in getting fabric quilted for your bags with Soft and Stable. So the first thing I would say is I think most longarm quilters want to communicate with you and help you understand the process if you've never worked with one. So don't be scared to ask questions, because we want to help and we want to answer your questions and make sure you're feeling comfortable with what you're doing. So that's my first thing, is just communicate with your quilter. The second thing is most longarm quilters have a minimum price So it's based on size, right? So if you're sending a baby quilt, oftentimes you'll pay the minimum price for a baby quilt. So I would suggest looking into that before you're sending your fabric as well, because my minimum price is $45. So the best bang for your buck with quilting is to send at least 1.5 yards of fabric. So that will get you over that minimum price threshold. So you won't be paying more for quilting than you're getting the value of your quilting. Another tip for working with longarm quilters when dealing with that minimum price, most longarm quilters, if they charge you the minimum price per project loaded on the machine. So for instance, this setup that I have right here, I have 2 different bags that are going to be made by these particular projects, but they're going to be loaded on one backing. So having that makes them all fall under one price. So one of these bags wouldn't be quite the minimum price. So that's going to be another way to maximize your dollar when working with a Longarm Quilter. One of the other things I wanted to mention that is helpful is I know for some of Annie's patterns, she has, like, for instance, her travel duffel bag. If you are using a directional fabric for the travel duffel bag, you will want to seam the panel that will be the exterior panel in the center at the bottom before you send it to your Longarm Quilter. So I don't know if you can really tell, but one of these fabrics, or both of these fabrics, are directional. And so this client pieced a seam right here because this is going to be a big bag as well. And so the seam is done before sending to the Longarm Quilter. So you want to take that into consideration. And then another tip is, I've seen, like, Annie has lots of small projects that would be awesome to have Longarm quilted, like the clam up bags, or maybe Take a Stand, or Ditty bags, or Easy Does It, all of these great smaller projects. So if you wanted to piece together fat quarters and have just like a panel of fat quarters pieced together to send with one backing, then you could do something like that as well, which I think is such a great tip. And I think that Annie's talked about this a lot on her lives when she's working on a new prototype or a project, and she just is so glad to have a bunch of quilted soft and stable, so she can just start cutting into it and make her bag. And I think that that's such a great way to do it, is if you want to panel piece a bunch of different fabrics as the main and just use one lining fabric. That's such a great way to get a variety of projects quilted at once. So those are the big things with working with a Longarm Quilter. Make sure you send enough fabric. So most Longarm Quilters will require your backing to be bigger than your top, especially with quilting. So you want to ask if that's how they do it for soft and stable as well. So I particularly like my back to be at least taller than the panel that's quilted, so that I have space on the top and bottom. But I don't mind working with fabric that's the same width as the backing. But if I do have extra at the top and the bottom, that helps me with the quilting. And then I just quilt as much quiltable space on the fabric as I can. And when I load, okay, I guess that leads me into loading soft and stable on a long arm. So if you're a long armor, or if you want to understand a little bit more of the process of doing the long arming, when I load a panel to be quilted, like I said, I just quilt as much of quiltable space as I can with the machine. So you can see I have my side clamps, and this has been such a good tip to use if you haven't done this. These are just yardsticks that I like to stick underneath my clamps, but it keeps the clamps up so that the machine doesn't catch on them, especially when I quilt these, because I quilt right to the edge. My machine doesn't run into this at all, right? It keeps the clamps up from the machine, which is really helpful. And then when I'm cutting soft and stable, I cut from a roll because I stock soft and stable on the roll. And that's something to consider as well. If you want to send your own soft and stable, make sure to communicate that with your quilter, because soft and stable is amazing because the creases in it will steam right out, but your quilter may have like an ironing charge in preparation to loading, and you would definitely want to have the creases out of the soft and stable before loading. So that's one thing I love to offer my clients, is that I stock soft and stable on the roll. So then when I cut it off to use it, there's no creases at all. And you all know that soft and stable is 60 inches wide, 58 to 60 inches wide. So I like to load it on one side, really close to the edge here, so that I have a big chunk of excess on one side, so that when I send it back to you, I will send you everything that you paid for. And you can use the soft and stable here for your smaller projects that you're going to be quilting on your domestic machine, which I always love to have that extra fabric if I'm needing a quick project to quilt up, like a clam up or Easy Does It, one of those patterns. So be sure to, like I said, just check and see how they prefer the backing, and whether they're okay if you send your own soft and stable. Just communicate all of that so you aren't surprised by any of those extra charges that might sneak in there. One thing that I wanted to share as a tip too that's really fun is this panel. Because it's divided, I can switch the thread colors, which is nice. We are doing one design on this, on both of this, the same design on both, but I could switch the design too if I wanted. So that's a really great thing to communicate. Okay, I have two panels, I want two designs, or I want one design, but I would like thread colors different, and your quilter can manage to do all of those things. Another tip for quilting is, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but I have one of these, I probably can't show you, but I have a floor length mirror, I guess a door mirror, not a floor length mirror, that I picked up, that I lay under my machine so that I can check my tension. So that's a really great tip for long arm quilters if you need an easy way to be able to see underneath your machine. And I think I find that I quilt with a variety of thread colors when I'm quilting with soft and stable, because you're quilting different things. So when you want to make sure your thread colors and your tension's right, if you're mixing thread colors, that's been a really great helpful thing for me as well. All right, so then the last thing I wanted to chat about, I'm going to take a drink real quick. The last thing I wanted to chat about today is choosing pantographs. And I know that Linda touched on this last week too. So this is something great to communicate with your long arm quilter about as well, because if you have a directional fabric, or if you pick a design, a pantograph design that's directional, you may want to just take those things into consideration. So the pantograph that we're doing on these is called Chevron Tumbler Grande, and I'm going to just give you a close-up of it because I quilted it on one of my panels recently, and since it's harder to see on the machine. But I love this design because it won't matter if I cut it out this way or if I cut it out this way. The design is going to look the same no matter what. So I like to pick pantographs that are non-directional so that it won't matter if I need to cut out a piece that's going to be the front of a bag here, and then it fits better to cut out the side of the bag here. It won't matter which direction I'm cutting because the quilting looks the same. So you want to consider that when picking pantographs. And then the scale of the quilting. So I would imagine a lot of long arm quilters, when we have an intake form for people to submit quilts to be quilted here at Knot and Thread, I have an option where you can pick light, medium, or dense quilting. And people like different densities for different reasons. For bags, I like to have a little bit more quilting than quilts usually. I don't want to quilt the soft and stable to death, but I like to have a little bit more quilting because if I'm cutting out smaller pieces, I don't want it to be super big, right? So I like a little bit denser quilting, and then I like to pick non-directional pantos, especially for like these projects where it's directional this way. So it's going to wrap around, the bag's going to wrap around each side. So I wouldn't want, but then the next panel down is like going this direction and the fabric's this direction. So you get what I'm saying. We want to always consider like how the pantograph will lay on the fabric and how it will be used when cut out of the fabric. And let me see, did I cover everything? Yeah, thread colors, directional pantos, all of that. But we love quilting soft and stable here. It's like one of my favorite things to do because I imagine it's going to be created into an amazing bag. And I love having access to my long arm to quilt fabric for my own bags. And I'm excited to be able to show you some samples in just a little bit. So I'll turn the time back over to Annie while I get my camera reset up for that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I really loved seeing all of those ideas that you have, and I can't wait to see the bags that you're going to show us. I know that some of them are ones that you've made using our patterns, and some are ones that you've made using your patterns, so that's extra fun. I really loved the idea about putting several different pieces of fabric on one to have that quilted, because there are so many things that you can do with that. That's something we sometimes do is if we only want like a yard of something quilted, we'll sew a couple of those pieces together, and then we'll sometimes even, sew the backing together just so that we make a bigger piece and Linda doesn't have to load each one separately. And sometimes that gives you some really fun effects when you've got two different lining fabrics on the same exterior fabric or vice versa. So it makes it really, really interesting. So for those of you who are watching, if you've got any questions that Kait didn't answer in there, she's going to show us some models that she makes, but be sure and enter your questions in there too, so that we can be sure and get those answered for you while Kait's with us. So Kait lives in northern Utah. She lived in St. George. I think she grew up here and went to school here, and I hired her not long after she graduated from high school, I think. So she was my right-hand lady. I really depended on her a lot. And then she got married, or she moved up north, and then she got married and starting a family, started her own business, and yeah, I really miss seeing her. The good thing is her mom still manages our local quilt shop, and so she comes down to visit her parents, visit grandparents pretty regularly, so we get to touch base with each other at least a couple times a year usually. So Kait,
We're ready to go back.
you ready? Yeah. I don't know how long it's going to take her. Looks like she's ready. Good.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, Annie and I had so many good times together. I mean, so many memories. We went through so much during the time that I worked for her, and even when I moved up here, it was so sad. I was so sad to lose that job, and Annie hired me to sew samples for her, which was like the best thing ever, because I was in a college town and I didn't like any of the call center jobs, and I was like, all I want to do is sew. It was like the best thing ever. So it was like continued to be hard to make the break from Annie, because I just loved my time there and still think of it fondly. And like I said earlier, so grateful for the things that I got to learn while working for Annie. She's been the best business mentor and friend, and so glad that we still get to see each other when I travel down to St. George.
For sure.
So, okay. So I'm just going to go through some of these samples that I have up here. A lot of these bags are Annie's, some of them are my patterns, but all of them were long arm quilted on the long arm by me. And this is the MJ Messenger bag. This is such a great pattern, one of Annie's. So I quilted this with the Pantograph Dizzy Izzy, which is a favorite. I love it. I don't know, hopefully I can show you. It's just some swirls, which is a great design for quilting bags. So this is the MJ Messenger bag, but I wanted to show you. So I quilted like a couple yards of this fabric, and then I was able to make this bag, a zip it up bag, and a take a stand bag. All of these projects, plus I was just looking through my quilted soft and stable scraps, and I have more. So I'm sure I could make some other little small bags as well. So it's such a great thing to be able, especially if you have a fabric you love, which I do love this. I loved these Tula. This is one of my favorite Tula lines. So you can see too that the exterior on this one is this print, and the interior was the was this, right? So I quilted the two fabrics together, and they were kind of two main fabrics. I grabbed a scrap of it because I thought it would be cool to show. Let me see where I put it. Oh, it fell over here. because I found a scrap of it. So you can see I kind of did a main fabric, and then this one is kind of a main fabric, or it could be a lining fabric too. So it's kind of fun to think about like what fabrics you want to send, rather than being like, oh, I need a light lining or this, just you can consider doing like 2 fabrics that are kind of main fabrics. So, all right, so there's the zip it up case. It's perfect for the Tula hardware, which I have and I love. Such a great bag. And I was showing it, I'm sure everyone's seen this, but oh, scissors just fell. But it lays perfectly over the take a stand bag. So, all right, so this is the take a stand bag. There's 2 sizes in this pattern. This is the smaller size, and this is such a great bag too. I just took this to a sew night the other night and filled it up with all the notions that I needed. So it's great. Like I said, it's also quilted with the Dizzy Izzy pantograph. And then this is the ultimate travel bag / carry-on travel bag. And I've made this one a while ago. This is out of an Amy Butler fabric. I'm a huge Amy Butler fan, and I love this bag. This is the bag I take on every trip. And I quilted it with a pantograph called Feathered Crescent. It's a little bit a feather design. I'm not sure you can see it super well, but hopefully you can see that all right. Anyways, but that's been such a fun bag. And this is the travel duffel bag as well. And I use the same pantograph, Feathered Crescent. So I'll do a close-up on that. Also out of an old Amy Butler print. I'm a serious fan. I miss her fabric. Anyways, but also such a great bag. So many pockets, so functional. All right. And so then some of my own patterns. I'm so privileged to be able to share some of my own patterns. I always dreamed I could do what Annie did. I don't know that I do it as well, but I sure try. I loved being a part of some of the design process when I worked for Annie and at ByAnnie. And so, yeah, so this is called the Hello Pouches pattern. It comes with 4 sizes. And I quilted these little panels. This would be a perfect example of piecing together little teeny panels to be quilted on one lining. So this is called circular border, this quilting design. And I did the same quilting design here. I think I can show it on a print that will show it better on all 4 of these. You can see that okay. Yeah, I love that little design. All right, so that one was called Hello Pouches. And this pattern's really great because it uses 1 strip of soft and stable at the bottom. So when I have extra pieces like this that I can't get rid of because it's precious quilted soft and stable, oftentimes a lot of these are big enough to cut out a Hello Pouch, which is my favorite way to use up those strips of quilted soft and stable. All right, so this is my pattern called the Boundless Carry-All. And it's just an open tote. There's no pockets inside, but there's 4 pockets on the outside, deep pockets on each of the edges. And I quilted this with a pantograph called Bread Basket. So that's a nice non-directional pantograph as well. And has been a really great one for bags. All right, and then this is really one of my favorite patterns. It's called the Violet Backpack. If you followed me, if you personally on Instagram for a while, I've named a lot of my patterns after my nieces. And so everyone, when I announced I was pregnant, was saying, oh, we can't wait to see what pattern you name after your daughter. And I was like, oh my gosh, the pressure's on to give her a really good pattern. And so this is what I came up with last year. And I was like, this is the perfect little bag for her. So, and it's good for an adult too. I wanted to show you. This is my purse. I use it all the time. So it's a great size for an adult for a purse, but it's great for a toddler. So I quilted this one with, let's see, this one is called Interlocking Orange Pill is the pantograph. And I love this one for bags too. But yeah, this is a sweet little backpack. So that's called the Violet backpack. And then the last pattern I wanted to share, in my newest pattern, is called the Patchwork Duffel. And I think it's such a fun bag. It's pretty simple. There's only 2 pockets on the outside, no other pockets, just those 2 giant pockets on the exterior. I also quilted this with the pantograph interlocking orange pills. So hopefully you can see that okay. But I think the patchwork is fun. This was actually fabric that I had left over from an Anna Maria Horner quilt that I quilted probably 4 years ago. So I love doing the patchwork to use up all of my scraps left over from quilts. So that is the samples I have to show you today.
Yeah. Those are so fun to see. I hadn't seen the new patchwork bag up close, so that was really fun to see that. I have never made one doing patchwork, and I need to do that. So do you put some careful thought into that so that you quilt one big panel and you can get your pockets and everything out of that piece, or do you do separate pieces?
So when I designed it, I wanted it to be designed so that you could see like 9 squares all on the end here. So you patch each panel. So each section for the bag, the pocket, the end panel, the bag panel, they're all patched separately. So you could quilt smaller pieces if you wanted, but and then the big one is just 1 panel. So technically you have 4 different panels that you quilt.
And when you do that on a long arm, do you quilt 4 separate panels, or do you somehow lay it on one piece of lining and just quilt between them?
So I load my lining and then I float all the separate pieces for the bag. Yeah, so I load them technically separately, but I just float them on the top.
Got it. I get it. So you probably pick something for the lining that's not going to be directional in case they don't line up exactly perfect with that, huh?
Yeah, for sure. This one we used a really fun text print. Hopefully I can show you. It's like a text print that had text going, newspaper, all different directions. So it worked out really nice.
Nice. That's really fun. That's really fun. I did want to make one clarification. The bag that you made that you had your tools in, that's actually running with scissors. So zip it up. Zip it up looks the same if you look at it when it's closed, but when you open it, it's got pockets, just 2 pockets going sideways. So for those of you who were looking at that, that's Zip It Up, and it's PBA 272 if it's something that you want to order. So just to clarify that. All right, let's see. No worries. Let's see. We've got some other questions. One question was where you're located, and we answered that earlier in northern Utah. You're in Orem, right?
Yes.
Yes. And can you
talk? I accept clients from all over the country, so.
Yeah, that's really good to know. And you, what's your turnaround time? Are you pretty quick when people send you stuff, or are you pretty booked up?
Right now, we're about 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
So that's not bad at all.
I imagine the turnarounds will go down a little bit because summer is less busy for quilting season. Usually, starting now, when school's getting out, people are taking trips and vacations. So it's a good time to send stuff in now. But we're about 2.5 to 3 weeks at the moment.
Right. And I can say, having, you may not be ready to sew a project right now, but if you can figure out what fabrics you want to use, and like I say, and like Kate said too, 2 yards is usually a really good number. Get some fabric sent in and get it quilted so that when fall comes and you're ready to go back to sewing, you can just go grab that roll of quilted fabric off the shelf and off you go, because that saves a lot of time. You've made the decision about what fabrics you're using and they're quilted and ready to go. So cutting out is much easier.
Definitely. That's great.
All right, the next question was, can you talk about how the fabric needs to be prepared for you? For example, if scrap fabric needs to be added on the sides, top, and bottom. I think you covered that a little bit, but maybe a little bit more clarification on that.
Yeah, so like I said, communicating with your Longarm Quilter. So I like my backing fabric to be bigger on like my backing, I would say, is your lining, right? Your lining fabric to be bigger than the pieces that you send. And if your fabric is the same width as like if you're going based on the width of the fabric, at least by a little bit more yardage, so I have loading space on the top and the bottom.
How much?
I'm
like
okay
2 inches, 3 inches, 6 inches?
5 inches.
5
6
inches? Okay.
Yeah. Like we have, the way we load it, we need at least a couple of inches on the top and a few inches on the bottom, maybe like three inches on each side. And like I said, some long arm quilters will want the backing to be completely bigger. So if you need to add leaders onto the back of on the sides of your lining, just make sure that your long arm quilter is okay to do whatever it is. Like I'm okay to quilt the width of the fabric, and I just try and quilt as much quiltable space as I can, like I mentioned. But some long arm quilters might not be comfortable doing that. So
okay. If you do that where you add something on the side, you wouldn't have to do like a 1/2 inch seam and press it open. You could just lay it on top and sew right along the selvage, couldn't you?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, and most of us probably have fabric that we could care less about, that we could cut a few inches and do that on the side if we needed to. I've never had to do that with Linda either, so that's nice. The next question was, when you talk about pantographs, are those paper pantographs or are they digital designs?
So I run 2 long arms, and they're Gamma Statler stitchers, and they are all computerized. So when you have computerized digital pantographs, I can scale them any size that I want, which is one really nice feature of that. So when picking a pantograph or choosing the density of quilting, I can scale it because it is all digital.
That's right. So if someone doesn't have a Statler stitcher or something that has that digital, they wouldn't really be able to resize a pantograph because they'd be working from a paper pattern.
Yes. Yeah.
Do they even sell machines like that now? It's been a long time since I've looked at long arms, but you can buy them that way?
Also, yeah, you can buy a hand-driven machine still, and they also sell pantographs in different scales as well. So sometimes they'll have like a 6-inch design, and they'll also offer it as an 8 or a 10-inch, design as well. So you can just talk to them about what kind of spacing you want and how dense you want. And maybe they can work with you if they're running on paper pantographs.
That sounds good. The next question was, do you do any free motion quilting, or is everything you do from a digital design?
So I always hope to do free motion quilting, but I run my machines all day long, every day, edge to edge. So we just do edge to edge quilting here. I don't do any free motion quilting, but if you ever want to drop into my inbox, my email inbox, or my Instagram DMs, I have a few long arm quilting friends that are excellent free motion quilters. I'm happy to refer you to somebody who can do what you're hoping for.
Yeah, because that's like a whole nother ball game. It's very, very different, and that takes, I would think, a whole lot of skill to develop and get really good at. I mean, not that what you're doing doesn't, but I mean, this has been eye-opening for me, listening to you and also to Linda about, how the designs work and how you get them on there and how you measure everything. It was like, well, there's a whole lot more to that than I ever realized. So.
Yeah, for sure. And right, free motion quilting is definitely a skill. I've done quite a few of my own quilts in the past, but since starting my quilting business, it's like my machines are always busy with edge to edge quilting. So that's what we do here.
That's awesome.
That's what we stick to.
That was another question that someone has is, do you have other quilters working for you? If with 2 machines, you must.
Yeah, so I ran 2 machines for probably a year. I've had a few different employees that have helped me over the years, but right now I have an employee. Her name's Grace. She's been with me. She just hit her 2-year mark quilting with me. She's helped me during bringing in 2 babies. So I'm really grateful for her because we don't have to shut down business at all. But I still do all the communicating. I confirm all of the designs and confirm all the scales because I care so much about that artistic part of the quilting process. So you're still getting to work with me, but she does a lot of the executing, and she has been such a great help. So yeah, I do have 1 employee.
That's fabulous. And to be there 2 years, that says a lot. And that means, if when you go have the baby, she's there and she knows what to do, and she's well trained already. So that really helps. All right, next question was, do you have a tip for keeping things lined up on the sides as much of the yardage, so that I have as much of the yardage available for the bag as possible?
So on my machine, I have a function where I can do a trim function. So I just do the trim function on the edge and try to just keep it as much as possible. And then, so I'm wondering if that's helpful.
I think what her question was is, you've got your backing this is what I'm guessing. You've got your backing fabric underneath. You put the soft and stable on, and it extends out on the sides. How do you know how to line up that top so that you've got lining underneath it from edge to edge, and you're not off by an inch or two on each side?
Okay, yeah, I understand. So that's one of the reasons why a long arm quilter might require more backing fabric, because it's so much easier. I mean, there's no doubt about it that it's easier for us to use your fabric if your backing is bigger, because then we can just baste what we've been given for the top fabric. But I just feel underneath. So like, for instance, I have these panels on and they're about an inch wider than the lining. So I kind of just measured them before I put the quilting on, and then I feel underneath as I'm basting to make sure that I'm catching the lining when I'm basting it. And then I have that basting stitch, which is then what I use as my trim feature on my machine. So
you go to that. I know one thing that Linda mentioned too when she and I were talking is she has a centering measuring tape. So it starts at 0 and works like to 100 that way and 100 that way, and she can use that to center her lining and center her soft and stable. Well, you wouldn't on that, but center everything. So that also, she said, really was helpful for getting things lined up.
Yeah, definitely. I have centers marked on all my leaders when I'm loading as well. So for instance, this panel on right now it's got a center seam because it's going to be a directional bag. So I made sure that all of my backing was pinned to the center, and my top was pinned to the center too. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Let me see what this says. Question. Is it better to get the fabric quilted before cutting out your pattern pieces? Absolutely. That's what I would always recommend, because you've got a big piece, you can lay your pieces out on it, figure out how to take best advantage of that piece of fabric, and then you've got leftover fabric. You're not wasting anything, so you've got leftover pieces that you can use for small projects. And we've got patterns like clam up where you could even put a seam here, so you need, for the small one, you need a piece of quilted fabric about like that, or Kait's Hello pouches that use those little long narrow strips that you have left. So there's so many things that you can do with that to take advantage of that. If you cut out the different units first, you've got to have them bigger so that you accommodate the shrinkage, but you're just going to have a lot more waste of fabric, I think. So yeah, I would quilt a bigger piece and then cut from that. Can you spray baste the soft? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, except the one time I mentioned when you would maybe want to cut it is like when you're doing this bag. So this particular bag was a directional print, and there is a seam in the bottom. I don't know if you can see it right there. So I did piece that one big panel before sending it to, or before quilting it. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
and maybe that's the only time that I would do it.
Yeah, maybe that's what she meant. I'm not sure what that question meant for sure. The next question was, can you spray baste the soft and stable on a long arm or domestic machine? You wouldn't probably need to on a long arm, would you?
No, and I wouldn't recommend it on a long arm. It's not necessary, because we thread baste down all the pieces before we long arm. But yeah, you definitely can use a spray baste on your domestic machine.
Yeah. I don't usually, obviously I don't quilt great big pieces. I quilt fairly small ones, and the soft and stable has enough nap that I don't feel like it's really necessary. But for a bigger piece, it would be nice. And I always avoided that spray basting because it really irritated my lungs. But we got some from Odif. They're, I can't even remember what the number of it is now. but it didn't have any scent or anything that bothered me. So yeah, if you're a person who likes to spray base, that's a brand that I could say worked really well. I used it. It was recommended to us when we were working with the minky fabrics to try and keep them from stretching so much. And so Teresa told us about that from Shannon Fabrics. So, all right. It looks like we got through all the questions. Kait, I want to thank you again so much for being here. We can't wait to hear about that new baby when he comes, and wish you all so much success in everything that you do. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you so much, Annie. It was such a privilege to be here with you today. I'm just so grateful for you. So thank you.
All right. Sending big hugs. All
Thank
right, I hope that you all enjoyed hearing Kait's trip for working with a Longarm Quilter, because I can tell you, having pre-quilted fabric ready to go, I'm going to get these out of my ears because they're going to fall out anyway, really makes sewing projects so much easier. It's definitely an avenue that you might want to consider. And remember that many local quilt shops offer Longarm services, or if they don't, they will probably have a list of local Longarm quilters that they can recommend to you. And remember too to ask for any patterns and supplies that we talked about today, such as Soft and Stable, at your local quilt shop. If they don't have them, they can certainly get them either from us or from their favorite distributor. Local quilt shops are the lifeblood of your sewing community, and we really all need to do everything we can to keep them strong and in business. And of course, if you don't have a local quilt shop, you can also find our patterns and products at ByAnnie.com, and you can find Kait's patterns and supplies at her website, which is Knot and Thread Design. And I'm pretty sure Jake put up all those links for you. So be sure to connect with Kait too on Instagram and Facebook. She always has something fun to share. All right, let's move on now to our featured local quilt shop of the week. One of our favorite events each year is our local quilt shop contest, which we celebrate in February. And during that contest, we encourage sewists to vote for their favorite shop and share a little bit about what makes them special. And so to continue the fun and support of local businesses throughout the year, each week we highlight a store and some of their voter submissions during this Live with Annie. So today we are traveling to Hayward, Wisconsin, to feature River's Edge Antiques and Quilt Loft. They were one of the runner-up winners in this year's LQS contest, and they are going to have their ByAnnie trunk show, which they won as part of their prize, on display throughout the month of June, so that it coincides with the Wisconsin Shop Hop that Gail is the chair of. So the store is owned by Mike and Gail Grassel, and it's been in business for over 20 years. They're known as the best kept secret in the North Woods, and it's an antique shop and quilt shop combined, which is housed in a building that's filled with gorgeous church-style stained glass windows. It looks like a really unique and magical place. I would love to go visit there. So customers of River's Edge Antiques and Quilt Loft raved about the people, the atmosphere in the shop, and everything that the store offers. Darlene says this is a charming cottage shop that sparks creativity even as you walk up to the door. When asked what makes the store her favorite, Mary wrote, the owner, the staff, the huge selection of fabric, wool, and patterns, lots of samples and notions, plus all the extras offered, Tuesday night Facebook sales, virtual quilt camps, mystery quilts, quilts of valor for the local group that have been deployed, charity drives, the list goes on and on. And Deb agreed, saying, Gail is so talented, so helpful, and so inspiring. She has taught me new techniques, gently guided me out of my comfort zone to try new things, and has gone above and beyond for her customers in the past 2 years. Her shop is beautiful, well-stocked, and organized, and offers something for everyone. And great service in-store or online. So again, remember that River's Edge has a ByAnnie trunk show on display in the store. It will be there throughout the month of June to coincide with that 2022 Wisconsin State Quilt Shop Hop. And Gail says we encourage everyone to come and see the 67 shops that are participating and see what each shop has to offer. I have to say that it definitely sounds like it's time for a road trip. That would be really amazing to get to visit 67 shops in one state. So thank you again to everyone who joined us today. We are going to be back next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time with another educational episode of Live with Annie, when we will be joined by Krista Watson of Krista Quilts. Krista has lots of tips to share for quilting fabrics on domestic machines, and you aren't going to want to miss them, so be sure to mark your calendar to join us then. And until then, happy stitching.